Mike at it.
Hey, Mike.
I was thinking about the word desperation and how the whole program was brought about in hopes that it would save people the last years of using to get them to a point to where I would resemble what I thought the definition of an addict was, which is somebody literally on the street living under a bridge. So the desperation that they're referring to has to be more than financial and more than situational. Number of charges, how many times I've been to the ICU, how many times I've actually died that I can brag about in meetings that I've started hearing in the last 4 years. Used to it was jails, institutions of death. Now people have actually died and they're in a meeting telling you about it. So I find that to be comical, but I'll talk about that for another day. But when I think about the desperation that they're talking about, it makes me think of the basic text where it talks about some basic tenets that I've really got to get before I really understand the desperation that they're talking about. One, it's the obsession. Once I've stopped using, do I get this obsession to do more, to start back even after I sang the Addicts National Anthem, I'll never do it again. And that's definitely a desperate feeling, knowing that no matter how bad I want to quit this time, that unless I work the steps, that I'm going to get that obsession and I'm going to use again, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's part of that desperation. Another part of the desperation is, again, what it talks about in the basic text when it talks about this is a threefold disease, is that the compulsion. It's called something else in other places, but it's the compulsion here, and what that means is once I start using, I can't control the amount I take. And I see other people seemingly doing it without harm. Although I haven't seen many social heroin users. I mean, I'm sorry to say a drug name, but you know what I'm talking about. It's people that seem to be getting away with it, whereas I could never have any left for the next morning, no matter what my plans were, because I would get the compulsion, and I could not stop, and I couldn't predict with certainty what I would end up doing to get more. That's part of that desperation. And I think the most important and most detrimental nail in the coffin of any semblance of non-desperation I would have is the third part that the basic text talks about, is the spiritual part of this disease, which the basic text defines as my extreme selfishness, self-centeredness. And I didn't even realize until I had been here for a while, living on the lie that, it only affects me what I was doing. When the fact of the matter is that I was a cancer in everybody and everything's life around me. And that crushing blow of that truth that, man, this is more than just about me. Not that I don't need to stay clean for me and me alone, but this motivator's about the look on my mother's face. The time when I've only seen my father cry twice, once at his dad's funeral and once he was at his wit's end over me. Those things are burned in my fucking mind. And those motivators can help, but that's part of that desperation, realizing the wreck and the tornado I have been in other people's lives. I was thinking about something that Paul said about you don't know which one of these 7 or 8 things that you do is going to come to your aid. It reminds me of a guy that died with, 15 years clean. He ended up having throat cancer and he died clean. And he used to say, I don't need but 1 meeting a week, but I go to 14 because I don't know which one that is. And when you said I don't know which one, it really hits home for me because, I need to keep doing this thing in fair weather or foul because I don't know which meeting it's going to be the one that I need to stay clean that day. Especially when you've been around here for a while and you've heard all the topics and you can quote all the pages. Those meetings where you go, wow, I've never heard that, become few and far between. But you know within your soul that you have to keep coming here because it must be a part of your life. When I think about the double life that was mentioned, it reminds me of the original place that was talked about and where that phrase come from. And it came from a story about a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde. And what that story really meant was you had a guy that had a conscious life. And then you had a guy that had an unconscious part of himself that he was not aware of. So the double life is more of a conscious-unconscious rather than I show you a nice clean-cut person and then I go on the street and I put on a completely new set of clothes and I'm some kind of vagabond. And the conscious, unconscious life has never become so clear to me as it was last week. I had a dream. One of the rarest dreams, because I rarely have dreams with any kind of substance in them at all anymore. I used to when I was newer. You have that to look forward to, that you will not have those terrible dreams anymore as much. But this one was particularly instructional to me, and it goes along with the conscious, subconscious, because in this dream I was out with a girl. We were in the car. I don't know who it was. It doesn't matter. Believe me, her will change if you're here all the time. Okay, her will change. The faces will change. So we're in the car. I get out to pump gas, and as you know, you've seen me enough meetings, I always have my little Monster. This is my daily treat. This is my fucking treat. And I highly recommend a treat because, you know, you can't come in and quit smoking and coffee and all sugar and everything. You got to have something that, you know. So this is my little vice. I don't drink coffee, but I had my little Monster in the car. I get out to pump my gas, and old girl dumped my Monster out of my can, and she put some beer in it. In the dream. Now, how I knew this, you know, I didn't know it till I got back in the car, and I know I'm not supposed to mention substances, but I'm telling you the dream, it's going to tie into subconscious, conscious, it's going to tie into everything, as I usually do. I tie everything together. So she pours out my Monster, and she puts beer in it. And I sit back in the car, and of course, you know, you're bringing it up, and you know, if you've been around for a while, yeah, like I used to tell myself, nobody can smell it. Yeah, right, motherfucker. Okay, I smelt this shit as it come up to my eyes. I said, wait a minute. And all of a sudden I got mad. And I'm tying this in for the newcomers because it's a frame of mind that you must have if you want to stay here. I got mad as hell. And I remember pulling off, and I remember driving straight to the Irondale Police Department in the dream. Pulling up to the back door, honking the horn, and here they come. What's this fool doing? And saying out the window as they come up, this person just tried attempted murder on me. Now you think that's funny, but we are talking about a subconscious concession of this desperation that is still, after all these years, still deep down in my soul, that I have an aversion to dope in any form. That I don't want that shit anywhere around me. See, so I was really glad that I had that dream. As ridiculous as it may sound, you know, you could put another substance like that. If somebody tried to slip that in on you, you would know damn well they were trying to kill you. Maybe I should have used another example. But the point is clear. That within my subconscious, I know I'm not living a double life because I live a life of recovery in my conscious life. And evidently, my subconscious is exactly on point with that because it feels exactly the same way. I don't want nobody fucking with my clean time. I don't want nobody threatening my clean time. And the idea of doing dope in any form sounds about as good as Drano to me. So that ties into that desperation that not only I must get when I get here, but I must keep through doing these things even when I think things are cool. Not falling into the 2-year trap. I fucking got all this. Usually it happens at 5 years. You can tell me if I'm wrong. There's a funny thing about 5 years in recovery. You see a lot of people from 0 to 5 years. You don't see many from 5 to 10. That's usually when that complacency sets in. And these are traps that old timers have a duty to tell these newcomers. So what have I said? Look at desperation differently. It's the threefold disease, and I got to get those into my mind really clearly, that it's not situational, it's within me. I get the compulsion, I get the obsession, and I'm completely self-centered. What I must do is these things and go to all these meetings, but let's be clear. Sitting in this meeting is not going to turn me into a recovered member of Narcotics Anonymous any more than owning a Walther PPK turns me into James Bond. Which I just bought a Walther PPK. I thought I was going to be a badass motherfucker. It's still in the bag over there. I don't even know how to fucking use it. I got to take some lessons. So I know that osmosis does not work with this thing, just as it does not work with many things. So if you're new and you think that you could come to these meetings and it's going to get into your subconscious, you can think again. It takes working these steps and seeing and swallowing some big chunks of truth about myself. Some are going to be very fucking uncomfortable. But I highly recommend this way of life over the long term because its pluses highly outweigh the negatives. I've had a spiritual awakening and do result of these steps in the past.